In public, you're not just seen, you're studied. Every movement, every word, every glance, interpreted, judged, remembered. And the smallest slip? It's not just a mistake. It's a message. A message that says, you're uncertain, you're weak, you want something. And power doesn't follow need. It follows control. Machiavelli didn't just teach how to lead. He taught how to appear untouchable. And that begins with what you refuse to reveal in public. Today, we're not just talking about bad habits. We're dissecting the silent behaviors that kill authority, attraction, and influence, one by one. So watch closely, because if you do any of these 10 things in public, you're giving your power away without even knowing it. There's a reason the most powerful people in history rarely explained themselves, why they held their gaze a little too long, why they sat still when others fidgeted. Because in public, perception is the currency of dominance. Machiavelli warned that control isn't about aggression. It's about invisibility, strategic silence, calculated presence. And most people sabotage that presence without even realizing it. They speak too soon, reveal too much, react too easily. The world doesn't reward truth. It rewards discipline. And the man who disciplines how he moves, speaks, and even breathes in public becomes someone others don't dare interrupt. This video is your guide to that discipline. 10 behaviors, all fixable, all dangerous, and each one more subtle than the last. Master them, and you won't just be seen. You'll be respected, remembered, maybe even feared. Ignore them, and you'll blend into the noise, one mistake at a time. Let's begin. The moment you start explaining too much, you start negotiating your value. Why? Because power doesn't justify. It asserts. When you speak, and then speak again to clarify, reassure, or overprove a point, you're signaling one thing: insecurity. And people don't follow the insecure, they manage them. Machiavelli knew the power of silence. When you over-explain, you expose too much of your thought process. You give others a map to your doubts. Instead of appearing confident, you appear uncertain, like you're trying to win approval instead of stating truth. Think about this. When a powerful person gives a command, they don't explain the reasoning behind it. They let the weight of their authority speak for itself. The same applies in social interactions. Say what you mean, once. Then stop talking. Let the silence do the work. Let your words linger without decoration. The need to explain comes from fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of rejection, fear of judgment. But power doesn't fear misunderstanding. It invites it. Because the less people understand you, the more they respect the mystery. So next time you're tempted to explain why you were late, why you said what you said, why you made a certain choice, don't state it. Hold your frame and walk away. Every unnecessary word chips away at your command. Let them wonder, let them guess. That's where your leverage lives. Someone takes a jab, a passive-aggressive comment, a dismissive look, a loud challenge meant to provoke. Most people react. They defend, attack, or spiral into explanation. But here's the truth. Every reaction is a transaction. You're paying with your power. Machiavelli knew the real weapon wasn't retaliation. It was composure. When you react publicly, especially to an insult, you're acknowledging the other person's influence over you. You've just told the entire room, "This person can get under my skin." That's not strength. That's submission disguised as defense. True power is selective response. You don't flinch. You don't frown. You don't even blink. You hold still like a man who already knows the outcome. Because the man who can't be provoked becomes unpredictable. And unpredictable people are dangerous. The insult wasn't personal. It was a test. A challenge to see if you bleed when poked. Fail that test, and you lose respect. Pass it, and they'll think twice next time. Maybe they'll even fear you. This doesn't mean silence is weakness. It means silence is strategy. If something must be said, say it once, calmly. Then change the subject like their words didn't deserve your time. That's how you dominate a room without raising your voice. Reacting is easy. Resisting is power. Let them throw stones. Let them perform. You're not here to react. You're here to reign. Charisma isn't about being liked. It's about being respected. And often, that means being a little untouchable. When you try too hard to be liked in public, people sense it. And worse, they devalue you for it. The truth is, the need to be liked is a form of neediness. Laughing at jokes you don't find funny, nodding when you disagree, softening your voice so you don't offend. None of these win admiration. They win compliance, temporarily. But they cost you presence. Machiavelli would say, "The prince who seeks approval becomes a puppet." When your goal is to be liked, you sacrifice authenticity. And people can feel that. They may smile at you, but they'll never follow you. Instead, adopt disinterest. Calm composure. Speak with clarity. Hold your frame, even if it makes others uncomfortable. The most magnetic presence in the room is rarely the loudest or the friendliest. It's the one who needs nothing, who walks in with value, not desperation. Being respected will get you invited. Being liked may get you used. Choose your influence wisely. There's a difference between being open and being exposed. In public, oversharing isn't vulnerability. It's self-sabotage. When you reveal too much about your fears, struggles, or private life, you create an illusion of closeness. But to the powerful, that illusion is weakness. Machiavelli understood that information is leverage, and the man who gives it away freely. He becomes predictable, easy to manipulate. Oversharing isn't just unwise, it's dangerous. Every story you tell about yourself gives others a psychological tool. Tell them you were betrayed, and they'll know where to poke. Tell them you're anxious, and they'll know how to shake your confidence. Even if they never use it, the knowledge alone shifts the dynamic. Mystery, on the other hand, builds status. Speak less than necessary. When asked personal questions, offer vague answers. Be kind, but elusive. Shift the focus. Smile without elaborating. People are drawn to what they can't fully grasp. The less you reveal, the more others fill in the gaps. And what they imagine is almost always more powerful than the truth. So keep your private life private. In a world that shares everything, secrecy becomes a form of strength. You don't need to explain your past, your pain, or your plans. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Power thrives in the unknown. In a room full of voices, the one who speaks first rarely holds the power. Why? Because speaking too quickly reveals your hand. It shows eagerness, anxiety, and worst of all, need. Machiavelli understood that in moments of silence, power reorganizes. The one who waits, who watches, who studies, holds the advantage. Speaking first often means trying to assert dominance, but real dominance is proven through control, not volume. When you speak too often, you dilute your value. Your words become predictable, your opinions disposable. The most influential people choose their moments carefully. They know that silence builds tension, and tension commands attention. Resist the urge to fill the air. Let others rush to impress, to interrupt, to overshare. While they show their cards, you build yours. Every moment you wait, you gather leverage. When you finally do speak, people will listen, not because you demanded it, but because your silence earned it. Powerful communication is not about quantity. It's about timing. Let your presence speak before your voice does. Let your restraint create weight, because when your words are rare, they echo longer. And in public, it's not the loudest voice that wins. It's the one that makes others pause. Speak last, speak less. But when you do, speak like you've already won. Emotion can be a weapon, but in public, it's a double-edged one. When you wear your feelings on your sleeve, you give people the blueprint to your inner world, and once they have it, they'll know exactly where to strike. Machiavelli didn't preach emotionlessness. He preached mastery. To lead, to influence, to command a room, you must know how to feel deeply, but show selectively. Because the moment your anger flares, your frustration shows, or your sadness leaks through, you lose control, not just of yourself, but of the room. Every visible emotion is a signal. Anger shows they got to you. Sadness shows they've weakened you. Even excessive joy can expose what you value too much. And what you value, they can threaten. The powerful man in public is stoic, unreadable, not robotic, but measured. He smiles when he chooses, not when prompted. He speaks with conviction, not impulse. His heart may race, but his face stays still. You don't need to suppress who you are. You need to control what they see. Save your emotion for the private spaces, where it can't be used against you. In public, calm is king, because when they can't read you, they can't control you. And that's real power. Before you even speak, your body tells the room who you are. And if your posture, gestures, and expressions scream, "Please like me," you've already lost ground. Machiavelli would say that power isn't just projected through words, it's sculpted in silence, in presence. The nodding, the leaning in too far, the forced smiles, the constant eye-checking for validation. These are physical apologies. They broadcast a single message: you need something. And power never needs. When you fidget, shrink your shoulders, tilt your head too often, or over-affirm with your face, you're signaling uncertainty. You're asking for permission to exist, to speak, to belong. But real influence comes from assuming that permission has already been granted. Stand tall, plant your feet, move slowly, deliberately. Let your gestures be minimal but meaningful. Hold eye contact, not as a request, but as a declaration. Your presence should say, "I'm grounded, I'm unmoved, I'm watching." Because body language isn't just physical, it's psychological warfare. The more stillness you command, the more attention you gain. The less you seek approval, the more it's given. Ironically, by those who now sense your self-sufficiency. Train your posture like a weapon. Let your silence speak volumes, because before they hear your voice, they see your stance. And if that stance is unshakable, you'll never need to beg for respect. It'll follow. Dominance isn't about controlling the conversation. It's about controlling yourself. And interrupting others, no matter how sharp your point may be, reveals a lack of composure, and worse, a lack of strategy. When you interrupt, you're not asserting power. You're revealing impatience. You're telling the room, "I need to be heard more than I need to understand." That's not strength. That's insecurity wearing volume as a disguise. Machiavelli would never interrupt. He'd listen, fully. Not because he agreed, but because he was calculating, observing, letting others reveal themselves before he decided to strike. People who talk over others think they're dominating, but in reality, they're broadcasting weakness, an inability to sit with silence, to let others feel important, to wait for the perfect moment. Want real power? Let others finish. Let them expose every angle of their thinking. Then when you do speak, you're not reacting, you're concluding. Your words carry more weight because they're built on patience, not panic. Interruptions say, "I need the spotlight." Strategic silence says, "I own it already." Don't compete for attention. Command it by choosing your moments. Let others clamor to be heard. You're above the noise. You're listening. And that in itself is power. Power fades when you're too easy to reach. In public, if you make yourself constantly available, always replying, always engaging, always saying yes, you dilute your presence. You become common, and what's common loses value. Machiavelli understood that scarcity builds mystique. A leader seen too often becomes familiar, and familiarity erodes awe. The same applies today. The man who inserts himself into every conversation, who's always around, who never withdraws, he becomes forgettable, not respected. Being everywhere is not the flex you think it is. Real power is selective, strategic. You don't show up to everything. You don't join every conversation. You let people feel your absence, so they respect your presence. Think of the people who hold the most weight in a room. They're the ones you rarely hear from, rarely see, but always feel. They move like shadows, not searchlights. So in public, avoid the trap of over-presence. Let others talk. Let others wave and perform. You sit back, you disappear. Then, when you return, even subtly, every eye shifts. Not because you demanded attention, but because you withdrew it long enough for them to notice. Powerful people aren't just seen, they're missed. Control your availability, and you control your perceived importance. Most people don't realize where you stand in public, literally, tells the world everything they need to know about your confidence, your status, and your authority. It's not just posture, it's positioning. Stand in corners, hug walls, or hover at the edges of rooms, and you signal deference, a desire to disappear, a subconscious belief that you don't belong at the center. But power doesn't lurk in the margins. It claims space. Machiavelli would never hide in the shadows. He knew that power begins with presence, and presence begins with position. The person at the center of the room, or seated where visibility is highest, automatically becomes the focal point, not because they demand it, but because they place themselves there. This doesn't mean being obnoxious. It means being intentional. When you enter a room, do so slowly. Choose a seat where you're visible. Avoid leaning on walls or constantly shifting locations. Be the axis, not the orbit. Most people never think about this, but watch closely next time you're in a meeting, a party, or a public space. The person in the strongest position usually speaks the least and gets listened to the most. Claiming space is claiming status. Don't let your physical choices betray your power. Master your positioning, and the room will unconsciously adjust around you. You've just seen 10 habits, small, silent, often invisible, that bleed your presence dry in public. And now you know better. Most won't catch what you just did. They'll keep over-explaining, keep fidgeting, keep reacting, and they'll wonder why respect avoids them. But not you, because if you've made it this far, you're not just here to watch, you're here to transform. You're building something, poise, presence, control, that rare gravity that makes people pause when you enter a room. And that kind of power, it doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing less, but doing it with intention, with silence, with edge. If that's the level you're aiming for, then this isn't a one-time lesson. This is a lifestyle, a discipline. And this channel was built for that discipline. So if this spoke to you, don't just walk away. Lock it in. Subscribe, not out of hype, but out of strategy. Because what's coming next will make sure your voice is never ignored, your presence never overlooked, and your influence never questioned. This is where subtle becomes lethal. Quiet becomes powerful, and you stop blending in. So join the ones who study what others miss. Because in a loud world, silence, trained silence, wins.